Well, I want to warn you, today is going to be a little bit different. I know that sometimes different kind of throws us off, but the message that we're going to have today is just going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little bit different. And we get asked sometimes as preachers, are you a preacher or are you a teacher? Do you preach or do you teach? And I never really have understood how to answer that question exactly. I guess I probably do both, and maybe at the same time sometimes. But one of my mentors, one of my friends, said the only difference between preaching and teaching is that preaching it is yelling it. Teaching it's just telling it. And so this morning we're probably going to have more telling it than yelling it. But I believe that if we'll hold on to the principles from God's Word, that we're going to take something, we're going to apply it to our life that's going to help us this Christmas season. By show of hands, because I need to know who's going to need to come forward and pray for salvation at the end of service this morning. How many of you guys went Black Friday shopping? Or Thursday shopping? Or shopped online? Keep your hands up. Okay, that's not too bad. I think that Black Friday, and bear with me for just a moment, I think that Black Friday has done its best to ruin Thanksgiving. It has taken what should be in our culture a day when everyone focuses on being thankful for what we already have, and it turns it into the day that we consume the most things. It is the largest spending day of the year, 24 hours of Black Friday. This year, it was estimated that in the United States, we would spend $23 billion in a 24-hour period on Black Friday alone. That's not counting all the shopping that you did on Thursday. It's not counting what you did on Saturday. It's not counting Cyber Monday and the next week. Friday alone, $23 billion with a B, $23 billion. If you take Thursday, Friday, and Cyber Monday and all the sales that will be going on next week, it's projected that Americans will spend $60 billion during that week. Now, I am not opposed to Black Friday shopping. If I'm just being honest, I actually enjoy getting really good deals on stuff that I'm going to buy for Christmas anyway. But you see how easy it is to move from Thanksgiving to the spirit of consumption. To move from Thanksgiving to the spirit of, I want more. And if we really get down to the root of why we want more stuff, it leads us to the inevitable conclusion that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time we want more stuff because we've seen other people with more stuff, and don't they look happy? We've seen other people with more stuff, and we don't want to be outdone. We've seen other people with more stuff, and deep down in the places that we don't like to talk about, we want our lives to be better than their lives, and we think that maybe more stuff is the way that we can make that happen. Quiet. For most people, it's not even something that we mindfully process. You may be sitting here thinking, well, that's not me. I don't care about keeping up with everybody else. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses or the Smiths, or I'm not trying to keep up with anybody. I just give me what I need to get by. And that sounds really good right up until the point that you realize that 99.9% of people who ever step foot in this building have so much more than what we need. Can we just be honest and say that Black Friday shopping, we're not really going to get things that we need? I went Black Friday shopping. In fact, I went on Thursday and I went on Friday, and I did not see one person buy something that if they didn't get that thing, their life could not be sustained for another day. We're not going to buy things that we need. I'm not saying that having stuff is bad, that having stuff is wrong. In fact, there's one thing that I want this Christmas. I really like big TVs. I've always liked big TVs. The one thing that I want this year for Christmas is a new big TV. But can we just be honest and say that me moving from a 55-inch TV to a 70-inch TV is really not going to change my life? Can we just say that buying your child the 1,001st plastic thing that has little LED lights in it isn't going to change their life? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. We bought our kids stuff. I have every intention of getting a TV before Christmas this year. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. You see how I threw that in there? There's nothing wrong with that stuff, but let's just call it what it is. We just want more stuff. There isn't anything wrong with nice things. The problem comes when I place my value, the problem comes when I place my worth on the stuff that I have, because it'll never be enough. If I place my value on the stuff that I can get, the stuff that I have, and always getting bigger and better and more, it will never, ever be enough. And that happens when we allow ourselves to fall into the trap of comparison. As we move from Thanksgiving into the Christmas season, I want us to refocus on a biblical principle that will help us make this holiday season truly the most wonderful time of the year. I love Christmas. I love the Christmas season. My Christmas lights were up on my outside of my house a couple of weeks ago, and Friday night they got turned on. We're the family that had the Christmas tree up weeks ago, way before Thanksgiving. Our Christmas tree is up, it's decorated, lights are getting plugged in on it every night. We love Christmas, but I think that if we refocus on this one biblical principle, this one idea, it'll truly help us make this the most wonderful time of the year. For the next few minutes, I want to talk around the idea of learn contentment. Let's learn contentment. Philippians 4:13. If you have spent a lot of time in church, you have heard the verse Philippians 4:13. If you can't quote it off the top of your head, we have it up on the screen for you. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Probably one of the most quoted Bible verses that there is. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Probably one of the most quoted Bible verses there is. I guarantee you that it's one of the Bible verses that we take out of context the most. Y'all can't get with me here. I told you it was going to be different. We're going to be a little bit quiet, but it's one of the Bible verses that we most often take out of context. We want to take that verse to mean that I can do anything that I want to do, that I can have anything that I want to have, that I can be anything that I want to be. I can do it all. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. But if you really want to understand this verse in context, you have to understand how Paul got to, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. In verse number 13, he went through verses 11 and 12. You can't pass over 11 and 12 and just take verse 13. It sounds really good. It looks better up on the wall in our houses, but it's out of context. It's not what God intended for the verse to say. So let's go back and see how Paul got to Philippians 4:13. Philippians 4, verses 11, 12, and 13. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned, everybody say learned. I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned, everybody say learned. I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. Verse 12, I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. And in every circumstance, I have learned, everyone say learned, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance in need. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. Verse 13 isn't a promise that I can do all the things in my life that I want to do. It's a declaration that Paul is making about his mind and his spirit, that he has put those things under submission, and he has forced them to learn how to be content. It's so important that we understand why Paul writes that he learned contentment instead of just saying that he was content. Paul did not just say, I am content in all things, and so I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Because if he would have written it like that, I know me, and I know you, and you would have said, well, that was Paul. That was his personality. Paul had the gift of contentment. He was just a naturally content guy. And so because Paul was content, that's why he could do all the things. But I can't do that. He didn't say that. He said, I had to bring myself in submission. I had to teach myself. I had to learn to be content. It's not a state that we naturally find ourselves in, the state of contentment. We naturally find ourselves in a state of comparison. Paul had to train himself to be content. What would my life be like if I never trained myself, if I never forced myself to be content with who God made me to be? I want you to think about that. What would my life be like if I never learned how to be content? I would constantly be comparing myself with everyone and everything around me. I would constantly be looking at other pastors, other leaders, other speakers, other dads, other husbands, and I would be comparing myself to them. I can never be the best that I can be because I would be too busy chasing my shallow view of other people's lives. I want you to get this today. We have to learn, we have to train our minds, we have to train our hearts, we have to learn how to be content. Contentment does not keep us from being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Contentment keeps us from trying to be the flawed version of others that we can see. Because what you don't know is the person who you're trying to be like because you've compared yourself to them, they can't stand where they are. They're trying to be just like someone else, and they're trying to be just like someone else, and you're chasing a flawed version of someone who you were never meant to be. Contentment doesn't mean that I can't be the very best version of myself. I still want to learn. I still want to grow. That's not what contentment is. Contentment just means that I'm okay with being who God created me to be. It's so easy in life to be standing in a place and to think, you know what, they've got more stuff than me over there, and they look happy, and their marriage looks so much better. And if I could just get to that place, if I could just get to that spot in life, then I would be all good. And so we start working our way over to that spot, and we finally get there. And the problem with getting there is now that we're there. Now that I'm there, I'm in it, and all of a sudden I see someone over there, and their life looks even better than my life does now. And so if I could just get in that spot, if I could just get a little raise, if I could just get a little more money, if I could just be where they are, if I could just be in that neighborhood, if I could just be in that car, if I could just have that stuff. And so we migrate over to that spot. And you know what the problem is with being in this spot? Now I'm here. And there's another spot that looks better. And so I do the same thing over. And I walk around and I get in that spot. And then that spot, you know what? My first spot actually doesn't look so bad now that I'm in this spot. And so I go back over to this spot. And what it leads you to do is go through life walking around in circles trying to be someone who you were never meant to be. Walking in circles trying to be someone who God did not design you to be. We forget when we're chasing other people's lives that we take ourselves wherever we go. I'm going to take Ryan wherever Ryan goes. We try to outrun our problems by being like other people, but the problem is that even if I get to their spot, I'm still who I am. I'm still me. We think we'll be better if we're standing where they're standing, but when we get there, we're still the same person. I'll be better if I can make just a little bit more money, I'll be better, but then when we get to that spot, I'm still the same person. Because I follow me wherever I go. You can't outrun who you are by chasing other people. Nor are you meant to. You have to be content in who God created you to be. This is the trap of comparison. It promises me that being more like someone else is better, but I'm just chasing a messed up version of other people. Doesn't that sound exhausting? Seriously. Doesn't that sound like it would be so tiring? Bouncing from place to place, trying to get more stuff and to be better and to upgrade to something better all the time. We wonder why our lives are filled with chaos when they should be filled with peace. And it's because we won't give peace a place in our life. Because if I take just a moment of rest, if I take just a moment to have peace, someone else will get ahead of me. They'll beat me in the game of life if I stop and rest. And so we allow chaos to consume our life where peace should be. Comparison will kill your contentment. Comparison will kill your contentment. So if we want to get off of the comparison roller coaster, we have to learn how to be content. A couple things will happen if you allow comparison to be a theme in your life. The first thing is this: comparison causes pride. Every time. Comparison causes pride. Luke 18, verse number 11, the Pharisee standing by himself prayed thus: God, I thank you that I am not like these other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give a tithe of all that I get. What is the Pharisee doing? He's comparing himself to people who he feels spiritually superior to, and it has caused him to fall into the sin of pride. He's doing all the right things. Fasting is a good thing. Giving and paying your tithes is a good thing, but he's doing it with the wrong heart. He's doing it with the heart and the intention of comparison and elevating himself above other people, and it causes him to fall into sin. He feels superior to other people because of their sin, and while he's feeling superior, he's causing himself to live in sin while he's doing all of the right things. Notice that I didn't say that comparison can cause pride. I said that comparison causes pride. It will cause pride every single time. If you spend just a day comparing yourself with everyone who you come in contact with, it will not take you very long to feel superior to someone else. And I may not verbalize my perceived superiority like the Pharisee did. I may not verbalize my pride, but it affects my life the exact same way. In the South, we think that we can just be nice to people's face, and we can say all the right things, that as long as you say the right things, that you're good. As long as we don't say the wrong things, as long as we just keep that bad thought in our head and we don't let it out of our mouths, that we are okay. But it actually doesn't matter. It's not the case at all. If I allow myself to dwell on prideful thoughts, even if I never vocalize them, it will affect my life the same way. And if I allow myself to dwell on those thoughts day after day after day, you're better than they are. You have more than they have. You do more good things than they do. You give more than they give. If I allow myself to think on those superior thoughts and prideful thoughts day after day after day, eventually it will manifest itself in action. Pride will affect us. We have to kill comparison because comparison causes pride. The second thing that comparison will do is comparison causes jealousy. Comparison causes pride, and comparison causes jealousy. In the same way that if you live a life of comparison, you'll find someone who you feel superior to. If you live a life of comparison, you will also find someone who you feel inferior to. Constant comparison will eventually cause you to live in a state of jealousy and envy. Note that I did not say it might cause you to be jealous. Comparing yourself with other people all the time will always cause you eventually to become jealous. It will cause you to have envy. Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy will rot the bones. What are the bones of your body? They're your structure. The bones are your foundation. So what's the author saying? He's saying that if you allow yourself, if you compare your way into jealousy and envy, eventually that will rot away the very core, the very structure of who you are. Comparison that leads to jealousy causes us to resent God's favor and blessing on others while ignoring God's favor and blessing in our own life. I'm going to say it again because I know you want to write that down. Comparison that leads to jealousy will cause us to resent the favor of God on other people, at the same time ignoring the favor of God in our own lives. If we live lives that are themed by comparison, we'll completely ignore our own blessings. Your neighbor gets a new car. What are you going to say? Congratulations. It's a nice car. I'm really happy for you. That's what comes out of your mouth. But the conversation that's going on inside your head is not always the same. How could she afford that car? Our house is bigger than their house. I know we make more money than they make. I bet she went into all kinds of debt buying that car. And look at that color. Who would ever pick something like that? Just wait until I get to buy next year. When I get to buy my new car, I'm going to show. I bet she even overpaid for that car. She don't have no sense. And before we know it, we've taken God's blessing for someone else and made that the source of our resentment, all the while ignoring God's blessing in our own life. I resent someone else's blessing instead of being thankful that I have a car, because most people in the world do not. Thankful that I have a house to live in. Who cares if it's the biggest one? Who cares if it's the smallest one? I've got a house to live in, and a lot of people don't. I've got food to eat, and a lot of people around the world today will go to bed hungry. Our jealousy our jealousy blinds us to our own blessing and causes us to resent the blessing of God on others. We have to kill comparison, because comparison will cause jealousy. So how do we do it? How do we kill comparison in our lives? I want to give you three things very quickly. How do we kill comparison in our life? We got to learn some things, right? We have to learn how to be content. So number one, learn to be thankful for what you already have. Learn to be thankful for what you already have. Hebrews 13, 5 and 6 says, keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Avoid the love of money and be content with what we have. Learning to be thankful for what I already have forces me to do some things. It forces me to focus on the positive instead of the negative. Learning to be thankful for what I already have forces me to focus on the positive instead of the negative. It creates healthy, positive thought patterns. Without getting into a science lesson, and honestly it's stuff that's way over my head, if you really researched into the brain, the thoughts that we have and the thought patterns that we have repeat themselves. We think along the same thought patterns. We form bridges across our brain over the same thought patterns. And so that means that if I think on positive things over and over and over and over and over again, naturally I will begin to think on positive things. If I think about negative things, negative emotions, and bad things that have happened in my past, and I will project bad things to happen in my future, if I constantly think on negative things over and over and over and over again, I will naturally begin to think about negative things. Have you ever met someone who is just negative about everything? Like no matter what, like Debbie Downer. No matter what, they could take a good thing and turn it into a bad thing. You know what? They weren't always like that. They were not born that way. When they were a kid, they got happy about getting a toy just like every other kid gets happy about getting a toy. What did they do? They trained their brain to think on negative things. And now, they naturally think on negative things. When we train our minds to be thankful for what we already have, we create positive thought patterns. Positive thought patterns. Learning to be thankful for what I already have also refocuses me on our perspective on life. It refocuses my perspective on life. Hopefully everyone had this moment on Thursday where you actually did stop, just think about all the things that you were thankful for in your life. And in those moments, something just shifts on the inside, and it refocuses us on our life's perspective. I've become so much more emotional since we had kids. Before we had kids, I hardly ever, very, very rarely did I cry. I cry a couple times a week now. Like I've just become so much more emotional since we've had kids. And I read a quote a couple of weeks ago, and just hit me, as they say, it hit me right in the feels. I mean, I was sitting in my office, and I'm reading this quote, and I cried as I was reading this quote because I dreaded the day that this was going to become reality for me. It says, this was the quote, "One day your parents put you down, and they never picked you back up again." And then it says, let that sink in. And I started thinking about that and my boys. And one day, because right now, Brantley can't move without someone, well, he can roll, but he gets from place to place because one of us pick him up and move him. It's a common thing for Judah to run up. Still, he's almost 4, but he'll run up and he'll jump up in my arms and I'll carry him somewhere. But I had the thought, one day I'm going to set Judah down and I'll never pick him back up like that again. I will never carry him like he's my baby ever again after that. Being thankful for the things in my life causes me to refocus on things that actually matter. Because if I'm not really careful, sometimes Judah will run up to me and it'll be a burden. Son, please, for the love of all that is right and holy, go to your room for 15 minutes and play the quiet game alone. Please just give me a break for just a minute. But when I force myself to be thankful for the things that I have in my life, it refocuses my perspective. I guarantee you, since I have read that quote, there has not been one time that I had the chance to hold Judah that I did not hold him. Why? Because it refocused my perspective on what actually matters, the things that are actually important. Being thankful for what we already have will cause us to refocus. And I had the thought, what if our greatest challenges were actually our greatest blessings? What if the greatest challenges that I face in the day, the things that I complain about most during the day, what if those things were actually my greatest blessings? I saw this online the other day. I edited it a little bit. I'm thankful for waking up early. If you know me, I like to sleep. This afternoon, there's a 100% chance that I'm going to take a nap. But I can be thankful for waking up early because I have a job to go to. Thankful for a house to clean because I have a safe place to stay. Thankful for laundry, and I cannot stand folding the laundry. I'll put it in the washer, I'll put it in the dryer, I'll take it out, and I'll throw it on the couch, but please don't make me fold the laundry and put it away. But I can be thankful for laundry. Why? Because I have clothes to wear. Thankful for dirty dishes because I have food to eat. There's grocery shopping to do, but I have money to spend. Thankful for a noisy house because I have friends and family who I love. Thankful for endless 3-year-old questions because I have kids who are learning. Thankful for getting in bed and being absolutely worn out because I'm still alive and I get to do it again tomorrow. I want to challenge you this December, this Christmas season, to intentionally take some time out of every day and just get on your phone, get in your journal, get somewhere and write down one thing, just one thing that you're thankful for that day. You don't have to put it on Facebook. You don't have to let the whole world know. Just take a moment and be thankful for something. Here's the thing about learning a behavior. You never learn something on accident. In all my life, I've never learned anything and did not mean to learn that thing. I never have just stumbled into knowledge ever. And we have to learn how to be content. That means that we're not going to be able to do that on accident. We're going to have to do it on purpose. We're going to have to be intentional about setting down and training ourselves to be content. Number 2, the second thing that we have to learn to accept who you are. We're going to learn to be thankful for what we already have, and then I'm going to learn to accept who I am. How can I do that? Ephesians 2:10. For we are His, that's God's, we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. You are the workmanship of God. It's a verse that we hear a lot, and there's a thing that happens when we have a good thing in our life, or we hear a good thing a lot, or we see a good thing a lot. It just becomes commonplace to us. I want us to slow down for just a moment and actually think about what that verse says. Before you were born, Almighty God, creator of the universe, stopped for a moment in time and he said, how am I going to make him? How am I going to make her? What talents am I going to give them? What abilities am I going to give them? What are the moments that I want to put in their life that they'll love, that they'll talk about forever? What are the moments that I want to put in their life that they may not like as they're going through it, but it will cause them to grow? Almighty God stopped and thought about creating you exactly the way that you are. We are the workmanship of God. God created you to be you. God created you to be you. If God had wanted you to be someone else, don't you think He's big enough to have made you someone else? Don't you think God is great enough? So many times in my life, I thought, God, if you would have made me 6'4", I could have played in the NBA. I love the game. I love basketball. Nobody practiced harder than me. Nobody put more time in the gym than this guy right here whenever he was in high school. I loved it. And so many times I thought, God, if you would have just made me normal height, I could have really been good. I could have really been something. But God knew. You know, I honestly believe God knew He could not trust me with that. God knew that He could not trust me with height, because if I could have played and I could have actually gone on and played, there would have been nothing that could have stopped me from playing. God created me exactly like He created me, and He did it on purpose, and He did it with a purpose. God created you to be you. He could have created you to be anybody, but He created you to be you. The real problem with discontentment and comparison is that you can never win the comparison game. You can never have joy trying to be someone who God did not create you to be. I'm going to say it again. You can never have true joy trying to be someone who God did not create you to be. Third and finally, we have to learn that we are enough in Christ. We have to learn that we are enough in Christ. I want to end by circling back to our original text this morning, Philippians 4, 11 through 13. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. So many times, we just want to end it at I can do all things. It's not what it says. We want to make the focus of this verse what all we can do, who all we can become. But the verse is not actually about us at all. It's actually all about Jesus and what He can do through us. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. The key to contentment is a life that follows Jesus. It's not just enough to be thankful for the things that I already have, because plenty of people do that. They're still miserable. It's not just enough to learn to be thankful for who I am, because plenty of people do that and they're still miserable. The real key is to be thankful for what you have and who you are through Him. To be thankful for who you are in Jesus Christ. I think that discontentment is one of the most effective strategies and weapons that the enemy has. Because what the enemy does when we are discontent is that he takes our blessing and turns the blessing of God into something that we dread. Turns the blessing of God into something that we regret. He tempts us with the trap of comparison. And when we fall, we lose our contentment. And when we lose our contentment, we lose our peace. And when we lose our peace, we lose our joy. As we move from Thanksgiving into the Christmas season, don't let comparison steal your peace and joy. Don't let the trap of comparison steal your peace and your joy. Don't let the enemy blind you to the blessings that you already have. Let's make a choice for contentment. Everybody gets choices. Let's make a choice for contentment this year. Stand with me if you will. Was that all right this morning? Sometimes we just need depth more than we need style. I like style. There isn't anything wrong with style. There isn't anything wrong with the flash as long